Hello and welcome to Mofo RC Garage. Today we are going to be installing a few things on this little Jeep SCX24. We are going to be putting on some new wheels and tires. These are the Mofo RC UPWs with the Super Duty style rings that we're going to be installing, with a set of the newish Super Swamper TSL, I think they're called the narrow tires is what they call them, something like that. First we're going to install those wheels and tires. We're just going to put them together first off. I also got a new box I want to put on here somewhere. There it is. To hold both the Furatech Lizard Pro and the Furatech Avatar receiver and ESC. So to get started, we're going to do the wheels first. This will probably be a couple different videos and also one long video. Probably. We'll kind of see what happens, I guess. I'm going to peel that off. I had just kind of double sticky taped it there. See if I can't get all of this back out of this little box. There we go. Okay. So the Avatar will fit kind of right in this area here, with your little pin sticking out this direction to plug in your servo and headlights and all that. The Lizard Pro fits perfectly right in here. You just kind of shove it in and wedge it down. And then you've got options for which direction you want to run the wires out and such. And then there's a little cap like this that screws on the top to hold it all down. You can keep everything kind of out of the way and make it look a little less messy in there. I'm going to go ahead and take off the body on here because that's probably the easiest thing to do to kind of start with. Pretty much anytime you're going to work on these, I would not recommend using a power tool such as the one I'm using. But if you do, be very careful with it. Try not to install things with the power tools fully. You know, you could always start stuff with them maybe if you need, but don't just go ramming screws in with the drill. I'm going to go ahead and take off the stock wheels and tires. And just set the little nuts to the side. Let me check real quick to make sure the camera is in focus of all of this. Yeah, it looks decent enough. Okay. This video is also going to incorporate installing a set of Flexblades onto this Jeep from Mofo RC, and also a set of the aluminum shock plates. Recently, I've been kind of toying with the idea of only having one style of shock plate for both the Jeep, the C10, the Deadbolt, and the Betty, all using the same one. I used to have a proprietary aluminum shock plate for the Jeep and the C10, and a proprietary one for the Deadbolt. This was the one for the Deadbolt. It would kind of install on here like this, going right to that back screw for the battery tray and right to the back screw for the bumper. And then on a Deadbolt, your shock mount would be one hole back further, and you could run, this hole here is not threaded, you could run a screw through that into the shock mount to help stabilize it all. But a lot of the times the shock mount actually just gets in the way when you're trying to put the shock on in the location you want to put it on. And so actually it may be a better idea just to take the shock mount completely off in the back, and that's what we're going to try today. So this is also going to be an installation video of the shock plates and the flex blades. Hopefully it won't be too long of a video. This is all pretty straightforward, pretty simple install stuff here. going to go ahead and take off the shock mounts, the original ones. Also going to go ahead and take out this battery tray screw right here. Now you can reuse your screws to mount these on, or there is a little spot to purchase the stainless steel screw kits with these. Now if this was a deadbolt, this would screw on just like that to the back bumper, but you see there's not really a lot of spots to mount the shock other than straight up and down if you run it like that. However, if you just flip it the other direction, now you have a whole pile of options to mount your shock on the Jeep or the C10, as well as when flipped this way on the deadbolt or the Betty. So we're just going to go ahead and install this that way on here, that since this is a Jeep or a C10, I'm going to go ahead and use the longer stainless steel screws that I sell as a little package with these. They aren't a whole lot longer. They are 1 millimeter longer. They are 6 millimeter long stainless steel screws instead of 5 millimeter long, which gives you just a little bit more bite when you're screwing into here. I'm going to put that one in there, kind of line up that second hole. We haven't put the bumper on yet, so I'm just going to line that up. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and take this bottom shock off and install the flex blade as well. These are the standard flex blades. These are not the XRs. These are not the aluminum ones. These are just a standard flex blade from Mofo RC. The original. Yeah. The original one. So this is going to screw, real quick, when you do put the screw in, it goes in the one hole right there that's available, that's large enough that the screw can be pushed into and through. Then we're going to screw it right into the axle where the shock would have originally went in, into that little mounting hole right there. Now when you screw this in, do not tighten it all the way. You can kind of snug it up and then back it off. You want this to be able to freely move like that. Now I can go ahead and install the shock to that little flex blade down at the bottom. There is 2 spots you can screw it into. For the maximum amount of extra travel, you're going to screw it into the back hole, the furthest hole back. And take note of the orientation of how this is installed on the axle here. You can see the flex blade points away from the motor and transmission and rocks up and down just like that. I'm just going to pick any spot on this little mount here for now to put this on, and we can adjust it later. These aluminum shock plates are threaded. They are very thin aluminum though, so do not go cranking these down super tight. Just kind of snug them. If you're worried about them coming loose, you can use a little bit of thread locker on them. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Same thing, this screw goes right through the hole that it slides all the way through. Flex blade screws into the hole the shock came out of, pointing away from the transmission. You can snug it up, back it off till it rotates freely, just like that. And you can actually even back it off a little bit more if you want. If you're putting these into aluminum or brass axles, you're going to want to use a little bit of Loctite in that little hole before you put the screw in, so the screw doesn't back itself back out over time. Now if this was, if I was not going to use these shock plates, the flex blades also come with some tiny spacers that look like this. Now if you have these tiny spacers and you're not using the aluminum shock plates or some other sort of thing like that, those little spacers can be mounted on the inside of this shock on the screw hole there. So before you put the shock back into this plate, or if you're going to install it into your stock shock mount, put that little spacer, screw the screw of the shock into that little spacer, then install it into your shock mount. That's going to help push it out just a little bit more, so there's not such a far angle across this way. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put this lower shock onto that flex blade in the same hole that I did on the other side. And if it does take a little bit of force to get the screw started, go ahead and apply a little bit of force, but put your finger on the back side so you're not just shoving it against nothing and you end up breaking the flex blade in half. And you can see my new Mofo RC tools actually go into the screw. They hold the screw extremely well, as you see me having to kind of wiggle it back and forth. This is a brand new set, so you will not have to worry about stripping screws out with the Mofo RC tools. I'm going to go ahead and take that other shock mount off and install the aluminum shock plate. And I'll go ahead and take off this other battery tray mount here. Okay. Same thing for this side. I'm going to install the first screw into the battery tray location where we removed that screw out of a minute ago. I'm not going to tighten it up all the way, just kind of get it snugged. You don't want to over tighten anything that goes into plastic on these, or you will ruin whatever it is you're screwing into. And I'm going to see which hole it was on the other side that I put this in. I'm going to go right back into that same hole on this side. Looks like it's that one. And just lightly snug that up. Okay, now we have that part installed. Let's go ahead and put this little box on up front here, so these things aren't just kind of flomping around here. Okay, I unplugged the servo a few minutes ago, so let me go ahead and plug that back in. This is the Furatech Avatar receiver, this tiny little thing here. That is the Avatar receiver, for anybody wondering, you know, size-wise how big it is. It is pretty small. I'm going to slide this part right down into the box from Mofo RC. I'm going to jam this little guy in here, like so. And we're just going to set that little Bluetooth module right on top of there. I'm going to fold this one over like that, and heck, maybe I'll fold this one over that way too, to kind of take up some of this wire space that's all over the place here. And then I'll put that lid on. I'm going to go ahead and stick it to the double-sided sticky tape there to hold it all in place while I do everything else. Oh, I got my lid on backwards. Here we go. Okay. Make sure nothing is pinched. And install some screws. These little boxes are 3D printed out of ABS plastic. Real decent, durable, you know, maybe not the best looking material to print things out of, but they are also very strong, and they hold heat extremely well without sagging or warping or anything like that. And if you didn't notice, the lid has an underside and an above side. The shiny side you see right now is going to be the top, or the top of the lid when you install it on there. And if you over tighten them, you will actually see everything kind of bending. So I'm just going to loosen that screw up a little bit because I can see it bowing inward there. Alright, that's installed. So I got my new little black box on there instead of the kind of opaque clear colored one I had on there. I was actually just testing out that material. Now we'll go ahead and do the front. I guess I lied earlier. I said I was going to do wheels first, but once I started taking this apart, I went ahead and started doing this. So we'll do this first, I guess. And the front aluminum shock plates are the same for the whole line of SCX24 models. They all mount the exact same way. You can use 3 screws to install them. First one is going to be, one of the screws is going to go into your bumper mount up here in front. One of them will go right here where your body mount holds in, and one of them will go right here where your ESC tray goes. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those 3 screws out. And I'm going to take my replacement stainless steel screw, and it may or may not really matter how you install these as far as what order you put the screws back in. I would say it might be best to start with the shock mount location screw and not the front bumper like I just did. Usually it's easiest to line up if you start with this one, but sometimes it doesn't matter. And make sure my body mount is going to go into the same hole it came out of. Looks like that. Okay, that one's kind of snugged up. This one's kind of snugged up. Now these are aluminum, so they do not really give or bend, so hopefully I should have probably not snugged them up before I installed the last one, but we'll see. I don't know, but it looks like it works fine. Let me go ahead and do the other side as well. And I'm taking the shock off right now just so I can go ahead and install that flex blade on the front as well while I'm here. There we go. Take off these 3 screws again. Front ESC tray, the body post mount, and the front bumper mount screws. I'm going to be going back in with the slightly longer stainless steel screws. And orientation of these things, they'll really only install one direction. If you can't get it to line up right, it means you're probably not installing it the right direction. So maybe just kind of take a look at this right here if you're using this as a reference. See which way those are pointing. Go ahead and make sure that body mount is in the same hole. It is. This little rig, you can see my little nano beast in there. This is the same one I did a video on the other day, running 3S to the nano beast. It did seem to work pretty good, and I need to get more test time on it just to see how well it will hold up with 3S. Otherwise, I have had a few people that have already been running them on 3S that have told me that it does hold up pretty well. Where did I put those flex blades? There they are. Okay. And same thing when installing the front ones, they will point away from the transmission. Slide the screw through the hole that it will slide through. Where there's only one hole on one side, there is 2 holes on the other side for the shock mounting. Back that off just enough that it is freely able to rotate. And I'll go ahead and install the screw into the bottom part of the shock. I'm going to flip these shocks the other direction because I kind of like them pointing the other direction. Sometimes you might get a little bit of binding depending on which flex blade you're running and which knuckles you're running. sometimes they can actually hit your knuckle linkage when you're on there. You know, when the flex blade is down like this. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It usually doesn't really make a difference. It doesn't bother anything. Now let's find a good location for this one. Let's put it right. We're going to start right here. Try that hole out. Okay. And watch when you're screwing these in to make sure that you aren't having any sort of interference with whatever is behind them in that hole. If there is, you can actually either A, use some little clippers and cut part of that off, or B, you can get a tiny little drill bit, mark kind of where it's going to go, take this off, drill the hole through or whatever, and then run it through and actually drill it into that part behind there as well. There's a few different other options you can do as well if you run into that. Okay, final flex blade. Okay. And I'm going to look at the other side, see what screw I put the hole I put that in. Looks about like, I forgot already. That one, I think. Snug that up. Make sure I got them in the right holes on each side, the same hole on each side. Looks like second one back and down, second one back and down. Perfect. Okay. We now have the flex blades installed and the aluminum shock plates. And you can kind of see the difference in the way the angles are and everything that help create it, create the extra flex as well as the droop motion when you lift up on them. And it'll be a lot more noticeable when you actually have tires and wheels on it to help weigh down the axles. So I'm going to hit pause, call that one installation video, start a second video, and magically mold them together somehow. Okay, and now we have all four wheels assembled. I did not install the last wheel yet, nor have I put the body back on, because this is also going to be two parts of two different videos. If you're watching the other video, we are getting ready to put the body on, which means putting on the last two screws that hold on the rear shock plates, the aluminum shock plates. We're going to install that. We're also going to check out the new wheels we just installed, and we're going to go ahead and get this out of the way real quick. Let's just kind of see what the weight difference is between a stock wheel and tire and the Mofo RC UPW. So stock wheel and tire, we are looking at about 11 grams. UPW wheel and tire, 28. So you get an extra 14 grams of weight per wheel. And this is just an RC four-wheel drive tire, approximately the same size as the Jeep wheel and tire that comes stock, or the deadbolt. So let's go ahead and put this back here. So real good, easy modification, not only for looks, but also for functional weight added to the vehicle, the Mofo RC UPW or DDP wheels. Let's go ahead and put on the body first, and the last two screws for the aluminum shock plates. Those will go through the shock plate into into the frame and then into the actual bumper mount there. And for these, I would recommend a longer screw for sure if you have one available. At least a 6mm, or if you have one, maybe even an 8mm screw to run through there, just to help hold that bumper on a little better, because you're kind of running out of meat back here. And don't use this tool to do that either, like a giant gorilla like I'm doing here. Let me get my handheld tool. And screw that right down. I'm going to go ahead and snug up these front screws now just a little bit, make sure they're tight. Okay, we now have the body on. Let's put that last wheel on, as well as the fancy little red fake hub, which is very nice, by the way. They come in black or red. They are aluminum with a steel nylon lock nut built inside of there to hold everything together and not come loose. And again, make sure your wheel can freely rotate after you put the little nut on. And sometimes you might need a pair of needle nose pliers to grab that little tool and pull it back out if it doesn't come out with your 4mm wrench. Okay, here we have the finished Jeep with the Flexblades on it, aluminum shock towers, and the UPW wheels with the plus 3mm extensions built into the wheel hub. So as you can see, the extra width and stance we've gained just by installing some good looking wheels, which also add weight to the vehicle. And let's check out that flex. Let's try 2 tires first, see how it does. 2 tires with the Flexblades and the aluminum shock plates, no problem. Let's try 3. 3 tires, no problem. Will it make 4? I don't know. Let's find out. Probably not, because 4 is a lot of tires, and these are the standard Flexblades, not the XRs. So you can see with the standard Flexblades, it's super close to making 4 tires worth of flex, but it doesn't. If these were the XRs, that would probably get the full 4th tire worth of flex in there, but you can see how much that does gain just from stock to now here. It probably did do about 3.5 tires. Same thing in the front, maybe 3.5, 4 tires in the front. So there she is. I appreciate you watching. Have a good night, and I love you. Okay, and now we have all 4 wheels assembled. I did not install the last wheel yet, nor have I put the body back on, because this is also going to be 2 parts of 2 different videos. If you're watching the other video, we are getting ready to put the body on, which means putting on the last 2 screws that hold on the rear shock plates, the aluminum shock plates. We're going to install that. We're also going to check out the new wheels we just installed. And we're going to go ahead and get this out of the way real quick. Let's just kind of see what the weight difference is between a stock wheel and tire and the Mofo RC UPW. So stock wheel and tire, we are looking at about 11 grams. UPW wheel and tire, 28. So you get an extra 14 grams of weight per wheel. And this is just an RC 4-wheel drive tire, approximately the same size as the Jeep wheel and tire that comes stock, or the deadbolt. So let's go ahead and put this back here. So real good, easy modification, not only for looks, but also for functional weight added to the vehicle. The Mofo RC UPW or DDP wheels. let's go ahead and put on the body first. And the last 2 screws for the aluminum shock plates. Those will go through the shock plate into into the frame and then into the actual bumper mount there. And for these, I would recommend a longer screw for sure if you have one available. At least a 6mm, or if you have one, maybe even an 8mm screw to run through there, just to help hold that bumper out a little better, because you're kind of running out of meat back here. And don't use this tool to do that either, like a giant gorilla like I'm doing here. Let me get my handheld tool. And screw that right down. I'm going to go ahead and snug up these front screws now just a little bit, make sure they're tight. Okay, we now have the body on. Let's put that last wheel on, as well as the fancy little red fake hub, which is very nice, by the way. They come in black or red. They are aluminum with a steel nylon lock nut built inside of there to hold everything together and not come loose. And again, make sure your wheel can freely rotate after you put the little nut on. And sometimes you might need a pair of needle nose pliers to grab that little tool and pull it back out if it doesn't come out with your 4mm wrench. Okay, here we have the finished Jeep with the Flexblades on it, aluminum shock towers, and the UPW wheels with the plus 3mm extensions built into the wheel hub. So as you can see, the extra width and stance we've gained just by installing some good looking wheels, which also add weight to the vehicle. And let's check out that flex. Let's try 2 tires first, see how it does. 2 tires with the Flexblades and the aluminum shock plates, no problem. Let's try 3. 3 tires, no problem. Will it make 4? I don't know. Let's find out. Probably not, because 4 is a lot of tires, and these are the standard Flexblades, not the XRs. So you can see with the standard Flexblades, it's super close to making 4 tires worth of flex, but it doesn't. If these were the XRs, that would probably get the full 4th tire worth of flex in there, but you can see how much that does gain just from stock to now here. Did probably do about 3.5 tires. Same thing in the front, maybe 3.5, 4 tires in the front. So there she is. I appreciate you watching. Have a good night, and I love you.